What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I hope all of you have been doing very well. So a couple of things that I want to start doing here on this channel. I want to start getting into the overall week in terms of getting into the trade breakdowns, the things that I saw this week, going over thought processes, little areas in which I could have probably done better, right? And areas in which I could see where traders get caught up when it comes to price action, when it comes to just dealing with the ins and outs of the markets on a day-to-day basis, okay? Additionally, going to be expanding the channel a bit more as well into other areas in the finances that don't have to do with just trading, but stay tuned for all of that. Now let's go into the charts this week, not only this week, but for the past couple weeks, and see what's been going on specifically with gold, what my thought processes were, and what are some areas of opportunities that I saw, why did I see them, how did I execute on them, and so on and so forth. So let's get into the charts here. And as we are here, I just want to get an overall picture of what gold has been doing. So as of recent, gold has been climbing and has been approaching its all-time high. Now, there's a couple of key things here that have happened, right? Most recently, at the moment of recording this video, there have been airstrikes from Israel to Iran, which is incentivizing more war actions. And as a result, we have this big price jump on gold, and that is just the beginning of these attacks, right? So there's been more attacks. Currently recording this video on a Saturday. Today, this morning, there was news of even more attacks. I expect the market to open up in a gap, and I expect us to be pushing further upside, potentially even making probably another all-time high on gold. Because we know that when we hear of war, gold is going to go up, right? Gold is a safe haven. This is what people are going to invest in. They're going to pull their money out of things like stocks and things of that nature, and they're going to pour it in commodities, right, as a safe haven whenever they hear of war of any kind. That being said, I anticipate further buys for gold, surpassing this all-time high, but we're going to see what opportunities we had this week. Now, a couple of things happened this past 2 weeks, right, that I observed. And here's the first observation, the first tip for you guys as traders. This is what I observed, right? So for most of the week, like, it was just choppy. Price action had been completely choppy. I was not necessarily finding a clean setup. There's days I'll just be staring at the market and not seeing anything. So I just would not trade for most of the week. And this was not only this past week, but the week prior. But there would be one day, specifically, especially this week, there will be one day in the week where price just goes off. And you get everything that you were missing throughout the week and more from that one opportunity. That's what I realized. Now, this situation has happened many times, right? There's been many times you've probably seen things like this. There's been many times that the market acts like this, where it consolidates for most of the week. Maybe there's one big move that happens. Maybe it doesn't happen at all, but it happens in the following weeks to come or week to come. But how do you actually deal with actually trading in these conditions, right? That's what makes or breaks you. That's what separates a great trader from the rest. Usually what I used to do when I was a up and coming trader and trying to find my way, what I used to do is still try to force the action, right? So even if I didn't get those A+ setups, I would go down to the B setups, right? I would go down to the B+, B- setups. Maybe even a C setup if we're deep into the week enough and I'm not finding any opportunities. But what I realized is that is where these are the times in which traders start to really lose money. These are the times in which your account starts to trickle away little by little by little by little. Why? Because you're not necessarily going for those A+ setups anymore. You're settling for those lower tier setups. And the moment you start settling, when it comes to this craft, the moment you start settling, that is sometimes one of the most dangerous moments for you in terms of your sustainability in this arena. Because you actually have to make sure, you have to be willing to let trades go, right? Even if you knew that there was a chance that this trade would go and maybe it's missing one particular condition for it to be an A+ setup for you. Maybe it's a B+ setup. And because of that one condition, it's not an A plus setup. You got to be willing to let that trade go, whether or not it plays in your favor afterwards or not. Because the reason why we want to go for our A plus setups is because we are modeling our strategy after A plus setups. More likely than not, you have modeled your strategy after A plus setups pertaining to your strategy. So that being said, you cannot settle for B plus, B minus type setups, C setups. You can't settle for those at all. Not because now you're bringing down the percentage that this is likely to work out in your favor. You're bringing that way down and you're exposing yourself to more and more risks. It is way more valuable to sit on your hands the entire week. Even if you don't see your A plus setup Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it is more valuable to sit on your hands and not let that account drip at all for the entire week and just wait for that setup to happen. If it eventually comes that week, then great. But if it doesn't come, be willing to sit on your hands until it comes. Especially because if you're going to choose a particular trading style, trading setup, etc., you're probably going to choose something that you at least see maybe once a week minimum. Usually people like to choose a type of trading style or trading strategy that they see almost every day or multiple times a day, right? So it's very unlikely that a whole 2 weeks passes and you never have seen your setup. And even if that did happen, you got to think about the times in which your setup finally shows itself and the way in which you can make back those profits because you were patient enough to wait for that, right? Patience is the name of the game. And that's what you realize here. So there was a lot of choppiness in the market. And what I realized is, so in this past week, let me go to the start of the week, right? The start of the week, we started around here. So let me just mark this off. So this was Sunday night, all right? And this is the start of the week, okay? Monday the 9th, Sunday night, etc. Let's just go down and try to get more perspective on what was going on in the markets, okay? So we had a couple of up moves, down moves, etc. But if you really analyze this area, and remember when we are looking at these things, yeah, you can point at this and say, oh, that was an opportunity, this was an opportunity, etc., etc. In the real live market conditions, this looks completely different to you as it's currently developing. As it's currently developing in front of your eyes, you're seeing that the market looks a little choppy. You're seeing a little consolidation. You're seeing all of these things. These setups are just not clear for me in the way in which I trade my strategy, my BC30 strategy. So as a result, you find yourself waiting for your setup and being patient enough to let that play out. Being patient enough to let the market play out, still have my alerts set, still have my areas of interest that I want to take a look at the charts, but not executing yet because I don't see a clean opportunity for myself or for any of my student traders. So we wait. Monday we wait, Tuesday we wait, Wednesday we wait, and then we get to Thursday. Now Thursday, now something interesting happens because on Thursday, the market starts to show that it's starting to break out of that area of consolidations, right? So we have this area of consolidation and the market finally starts to break out of that area of consolidation on Thursday, right? Now, could not break all the way out just yet, fell right back down during the day, but during the night, right? This is around like Asian session. During the night, breaks this area of resistance. And now this is where we saw opportunities coming into the market, right? Came on this bull run, retested again, broke the next area of resistance, right? Which is right over here. And then continued to push its way up, caught a couple opportunities within there. When it finally broke out of major resistance, right? It went all the way up by 400 plus pips. And this is just to show throughout all the choppiness throughout the week, right? Throughout all the choppiness throughout the week, Sunday night all the way through Thursday morning even, right? Throughout all the choppiness, it brought us to finally a moment in time, right? Thursday night, going on into Friday morning. It brought us finally to a moment in time where the market just exploded. And let me tell you, 400 plus pips, honestly, even if it was 200 plus pips, even 100 plus pips, that is enough. If executed correctly, that is enough for you to make your profits needed for the week. That one trade. that one move, right? That one setup. So the name of the game is patience. So why do I need to wait for B plus, C plus setups? Why do I need to settle for those things? Why not just wait for those A plus setups? Because they're going to come eventually. But what you do in the midst of waiting for them to come is what's going to either rattle your account, right? To the point where you may not even be in position to capitalize on it because you've been messing with your account so much, and the A plus setup finally comes and then you just realize you're so low on capital, it doesn't even matter. That's a big bummer. And you don't want to be in that position. You'd rather be in a position where you're letting go of those C setups and those B setups, even if they worked out, right? Even if they worked out from what you were thinking, let them go and wait for that setup. When you follow rules, there's just this feeling of discipline and accomplishment because you did it the way you said you ought to do it. So it is way more valuable. And guys, the thing is, you got to understand, like, regardless of strategy, what I realize trips up a lot of traders more often than not is how they deal with moments like these in the market. When market conditions change, the market is not trending anymore at the moment, and they're trying to like navigate those waters, but still trying to get into a setup every day. I don't know who told you that you have to be in a trade every single day. But sometimes, maybe, just maybe, you ought to think that maybe that's what's messing you up. I don't have to be in a trade every day. I don't have to be in a trade every week. But if I'm waiting for the right trade, if I'm utilizing my alerts correctly, right? If I'm utilizing the way I interpret the market correctly and the way I'm able to analyze that the market conditions have changed, if I'm utilizing all of those other things that I learned with experience, then you realize that I can be patient enough to just even trade once a week, maybe even once every 2 weeks. You'd be surprised, and make more money than people who trade every day. Because every single time I get into a trade, I am 100% certain that this trade I would take 100 times out of 100. Now, it doesn't mean it'll work out 100 times, but it does mean that based on what I know is a winning strategy, based on what I know is highly likely to be successful, I would take this trade over and over and over and over again. I didn't like over leverage. I didn't take a B setup. I didn't like take a setup that kind of looks okay, but there was something wrong. I took the setup with confidence. I also made sure I kept in mind my leverage and how much I'm risking, to the point where regardless of the outcome, I was always okay. That is the way you want to be trading each and every day. That's how you want to be trading week after week. And that's how I find myself profitable week after week. Do I ever have non-profitable weeks? Sure. But they are very few, right? Because ultimately I'm willing to sit on my hands. I'm willing to wait for these setups to play out. So when we look at the charts, whether it was this past week, whether it was the week before was somewhat similar as well, where we started consolidating for most of this week. Right? We started consolidating for most of this week. And then finally, we just finally had a day in the week, again, a Thursday, where the market broke out. It broke out of a lot of the consolidation that we were seeing, and we had a pretty good move. And then finally, when it broke out, it reversed and gave us another move, right? On a move to the downside. And then came the Friday, and then afterwards, the reversal continued, broke that area of support, and then gave us another move to the downside to end the week. So very, very simple, just waiting for the market to play out. It works in your favor. It works in your favor. Like, don't be such in a rush to jump the gun. Don't be such in a rush. Like, and here's the thing, like, the worst thing that could happen is that you miss a big move. I understand that, but you also have to understand that there will never be the last big move in the markets. Like, the markets will always have big moves. Maybe not every day, but they will come. You just have to remind yourself that you don't have to try to catch every single big move if it doesn't fit your parameters, your strategy, your setup. It has to fall in line with that because you have that strategy for a reason. This is why I utilize BC30, because I know BC30 is a strategy that comes through for me time after time after time after time. The times in which I'm having issues with the strategy a lot of times are related to me not following parts of the rules of that strategy. Now, there are legit losses where I followed everything, right? And it's a legit loss, but as long as I'm not over leveraging, I'm able to withstand that very easily. Very easily, by the next trade, the next couple trades, I'm back on course and I'm back in profit. But again, the name of the game is patience. All right. So that was this week, right? Though just these past 2 weeks, just one trade for the week, one solid trade for the week. And I got like hundreds of pips on them, made thousands of dollars from these trades. It was amazing. I had one of the best days of the year just from one trading day for the week. Remember to always let yourself know that when you find yourself rushing, when you find yourself trying to get in the trade every day, remember all it takes is one trade. One trade to turn it around. All it takes is one trade to change your entire perspective on where you're going with this thing. So remember, be patient, don't rush, and be willing to execute your A+ setups and wait for them every single time. All right, guys, we'll continue to do more market recaps on the weekends. Let's continue to grow. Let's continue to take these bits of advice and let us continue to make profit. All right, guys, if you liked the video, please like, share, and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. And until next time, guys, peace.